Dr. Joy Davis, welcome to everybody in Charlotte.
Hello, Robbie.
We're in it. That's the beginning.
I love it.
So there is no schedule. So please continue.
Yes.
Because the reason I started it right there, to all the listeners, we were having a previous conversation about your brand, your personal brand, and what you decided you wanted to shift to and why and from. Sparked some thoughts in me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to start it at that point.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really interesting, and you will hear this, and you know this just having already done your own background research, but on me, right? But my work really centers on the epistemologies of women. So you'll hear me say often, as a woman,
sure,
right?
Sure.
These are our experiences.
Yep.
And I say that as the kind of like the precursor to any conversation that I have. And so someone was asking me before, they said, well, why is it always about women? Meaning, everything that you talk about or everything that you write about, my research. And I always say, because that's what I know. I know my lived experiences. I know joy. And I am utterly obsessed with connecting the dots between 10-year-old Joy and year-old Joy. And those big, bold dreams, everything that I wanted, what I journaled about, the things that I said I wanted to do, we deserve to fulfill our wildest dreams. So when you ask me about, who Joy is, right? Versus the brand that I felt like I was presenting. Well, it wasn't 10-year-old Joy.
Got it.
And I just didn't want to. So I took this social media pause fast because I'm in this new season where my kiddo has gone to college. And I've realized that, and this is for all parents, right? We know this. But I've realized that I knew him really, really well. But I don't really know if I knew me. And I think that's the case for a lot of mothers because, we have to be all in with these kiddos. As a high-achieving woman who wanted to raise a high-achieving boy, it was full contact? All hands on deck. I had to be all in with him. And so I don't think that I always got a chance to really make sure I knew what I was doing. And so I would have these winning seasons that were great and I loved them and they were wonderful. And those are the things that you see on paper. I got my MBA, I have a PhD, I started a company, I've sold a company, I'm a professor, I have written and published and done these really great things, right? But I keep coming back to this place where I'm wondering, am I doing what 10-year-old Joy wanted to do?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, ask away.
Why is there a disconnect between the identity that you are seeking and the identity of Joy as a mother?
Ooh, that's good. There's just a difference between the two.
Well, it's another life, right?
Yeah.
That makes it not all about you.
Yes.
Right.
It's just, it's just the difference between the two. The tenacity, the grit, the resilience that was required of me to raise my son and ensure that he showed up in the world in the remarkable way that he has just required a different level of focus. And sometimes I think if I hadn't have had him so young, if he wasn't, so motherhood and womanhood for me are these intersecting identities, right? So I have friends who, for instance, they started their entire careers, right after college. They were extremely successful. They have, succeeded and done all these really, really great things. And now they have children. So they had this whole life, right? Whole identity that was anchored in themselves.
Right.
Whereas my experience which is the tail, right? Because I did it the Southern way. So my experience was such that immediately after college, I, had Nolan. I started my career at the same time. So it was almost like every step I took forward, I had to hold his hand at the same time.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I don't want to make the whole conversation about motherhood, but let me just say this. I am a writer. I am a scholar. I am a researcher of high achieving women, and I am a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those are such a huge component to how I look at success, how I look at life, how I look at love, how I've approached my relationships and my friendships. And so now that I am in a new season.
There we go.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm in this season where I can solely focus on me, now I have the privilege to say, are we going in the direction that we wanted to go?
Mm-hmm.
And I can ask myself that. And it is really quiet a lot of times. Okay, when the kids leave, it is like silence.
Yeah.
All right, it's deafening, Mm-hmm. I have plenty of time to say, Joy, are you doing what you want to do? Do.
All right, so this topic is so interesting. And like I said, this conversation has no guide. We're going to go where it takes us.
Yeah.
And we got a little bit of a time stop at some point, but we're going to go until that time. We'll
figure it out.
Exactly. So just in the sense of, without going into like, okay, Joyce, so where are you from and who are you and what were you like as a kid? Like that stuff's good, fun and good and all, but I would rather have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I love where it's going right now because there's ways that I can relate and there's ways that I'm curious because I'm not a woman and I'm not a female and I'm not, do you go by African American or Black?
I go by African American.
Okay. So, and I'm not African American. So those things are always of interest as a curious one, as a storyteller, as an authentic kind of a person.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in ways to relate and ways to learn. And that's just my interest in these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
The relate way that I'll jump into now is just the simple growing. It's the simple journey of life. Mm-hmm. It's the stages, the seasons. I go through them myself, very different, a lot of ways the same.
Yeah.
I think in growing and getting older and maturing, those identity shifts throughout life are that's the gold. That is the good stuff. And it's the fun stuff to talk about with someone who's open to that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it takes an awareness. It takes a vulnerability to even talk about it.
Absolutely. So it's funny because when you first asked me to come on the podcast, my knee-jerk reaction was absolutely not.
Well, why?
No.
Why?
And I typically say no to podcasts.
I love it.
And the reason I say no to podcasts is because I will lean into a conversation so hard that you will be like, Joy, too much.
Yep.
Yes.
Bring it.
Yeah,
Bring
too much.
it.
But the reason why, and again, I stand on this, right, is because you mentioned that you're a storyteller. Well, I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. Mm-hmm. So I'm constantly studying folks. I'm constantly having conversations, with my friends that are very intimate and, and very provocative and very profound. And so to have these type of vulnerable conversations, right, with anyone, with a stranger, means that to thine own self be true. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to, and I know you said, knowing where you're from and, who you are and all of those things is just the fluff, but it's not for me.
Not fluff. I didn't say fluff.
You did not say fluff. However, you skipped over it. And I will say that I think that who we are, and especially if you grew up in the South, right? Who are your people? I think that it is very important.
I do too.
I think that it builds a connection, right? And so when you're talking about, we can see the ways in which we're different, but then we share the ways in which we're the same. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in Charlotte, which you and I had talked about before. So I lived here since I was 12, 13 years old. So I grew up in Charlotte, but home is Washington, D.C. So I was born in Maryland. My mother was a third generation native Washingtonian. My great-grandmother was a civic leader in Washington, D.C., and my great-uncle Burton was the first African-American fire chief in the District of Columbia. That's significant to who I am.
Very, very,
that's my legacy. That's my lineage. That's why, my pedigree matters, right, to me. Because I know that what was already accomplished in my family it mattered, right? I was told and taught and shown that it mattered to me at a very, very young age. And so my mom went to American for undergrad. My parents met in grad school at Howard at Divinity School. And so when we moved to North Carolina as kids, my parents divorced when I was very young. And so when we moved here, we had this, idyllic childhood. Summers on the lake, Girl Scouts, soccer, sleepovers, all the fun things, right? And so seeing the sacrifice that my mom made to leave everything that she knew and everyone that she knew to raise her children where we wanted to live showed me that the sacrifice that you make as a mother supersedes anything else. And I know there's folks that don't agree with that, right?
Yeah.
But for me, what I have always tried to grapple with is how will I achieve Robbie at the same time that Nolan achieves and at the same time that he is happy?
Okay. Yeah.
And so he became my why. And so when we look at our careers and we look at what we accomplish and we look at what we achieve, right? There's always a why. And so for me, he just was my why. So I think that the childhood part does matter.
It does. I didn't say it didn't. I just was taking a conversation naturally. But here's where it ended up naturally. Yeah. So how about that?
Yeah.
No, I in no way meant to overlook or surpass your upbringing and the context of who you are today. That was not my intention.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you shared it. And now that's where we are. So I'd like to know a little more.
I know. And you know what? Here's the thing. And again, I'm going to lean on this. You're the storyteller, right? I'm the writer, I'm the scholar. And so what I do sometimes, right, is I make the story pretty and perfect. Oh,
yeah.
And make it compelling. And so I always say writing is my God gift. And so sometimes I really have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, is it perfection or is it poison? To want the narrative to read a certain way,
right?
Or to be a certain way. So, all of these bits.
Well, I love
to our identity are huge.
Yes, totally. The interesting thing that's standing out now is how you started this conversation about giving not a disclaimer, but kind of a preface to, I always say, as a woman. So you're giving a context prior to what you're saying. And then, of course, I could ask you about where you're from, but let's go into and you go, wait a minute, I want to give you where I'm from.
Yeah.
So now there's more context.
Yes.
So I really enjoy the fact that the context means so much because it should.
It does.
It should with everyone. And so many of us don't have great backgrounds and have things that we're ashamed of. And for whatever reasons, there could be millions, but often do glaze over that stuff.
Absolutely. But in full transparency, here's the other bit to that, right? When you say that, there's things we glaze over. Let's be honest. We're going to be a villain in someone's story, right? We're going to be a villain in somebody's story, and we're going to be a victor in somebody's story.
Sure.
And so, there are facets, right, about, I'll just say chapters in my book that sometimes I like to glaze over, and it could very well, it's twofold. I'll say that. It's twofold. There are some chapters that I will glaze over. And the reason why is not to be disingenuous, right? Not to be inauthentic or the opposite of vulnerable, but because there's someone else involved in that chapter.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that means that their perspective and their story, maybe has a different lens. Yeah. And so respectfully, I might glaze over it because maybe I felt like it showed me in a wonderful light, but they feel like it showed me in a terrible light.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that when we are, learning about each other and sharing who we are and how we got to this point that we're doing what we're doing, I do think it's important to, recognize that, yes, there are chapters that have some missing pages, sometimes by omission, right? Versus commission. But sometimes it's necessary, right? Protecting those that we love, and their experiences, right?
Golly, that's good. That's rich.
I know that was a lot.
No, it's rich because, you and I inevitably take your experience and the things that you're saying and just try to relate, in an experiential way. And I look at, so I was raised in a pretty severely alcoholic family.
Yeah.
And for years, if I were sitting here talking to you, I would go victim. I would go, he was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He was this, he was that. He created and caused all these things. Well, I'm not like that anymore.
Yes.
Now I have compassion. He did the best he could, tried his hardest.
Oh, Robbie, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it's interesting how it changes.
It does.
As you grow and hopefully mature and try to mature.
Yeah. And you know what? I always say I love Jesus and I cuss a little. And so, to walk in alignment with God's plan for my life means that there has to be a level of forgiveness and grace.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with forgiveness and grace means that, again, those chapters that I, maybe don't want to talk about are because I'm working through forgiveness and I am working through grace. And I arrived at the place in my PhD where I wanted to study high achieving women because I was really obsessed with the idea of, and this is what my dissertation was called, what does high achieving even mean? And then, does it even matter? Right? And so through my work, I conceptualized what I've coined a high achieving woman identity. And when I imagine this high achieving woman, she's well put together. She looks really great. She seems to present well, but she is a warrior.
Has to be.
She has to be. She has to be. And I know it is not always popular as a woman to use attributes like grit, resilience, strength, because we're in this season where women want to be so soft. And I think soft and femininity is wonderful. But let me tell you, it's grit, it's tenacity, and it is resilience that enabled me to even have seasons of softness and seasons where I could lean into femininity and healing. And so I always say with every win, right, there clearly was a huge loss. And you know this as a former player, right, as a former athlete. Those big wins are so sweet because there were a lot of times when you went back into that locker room and you were like, damn it. That was terrible.
A lot of times.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
But the wins are sweet because the losses were just so savory. Or excuse me, so sour. The wins are so sweet because the losses were so sour. And so now when you say, that you're at a place of forgiveness, I understand that because, that is the catalyst, right, to how we continue to write our story. I'm not afraid of reinvention. I don't mind a metamorphosis.
I mean, it's a part of a healthy life, I think.
I love a pivot.
Love a pivot. Oh,
okay.
Shift me all day long.
Shift away. And I just believe that is how you continue to get deeper and deeper, again, if you're faith-based, into your relationship with God, but significantly your purpose.
Yeah.
Your purpose. We're not here for forever.
No, we're not. Well, and the interesting thing is sometimes in this conversation, I find it to be inspirational for specific kinds of people because often it's a life event an external event that creates the shift, that creates the pivot.
It does.
And we don't
I
have a
tried to
choice.
tear that page out. Okay, I did. I said that I wasn't going to come in here and just talk aimlessly.
Right.
But no, you're right. I mean, I will tell you, in full transparency, that I have gone through a decade of just really, really hard moments. Just real wilderness moments. Yeah, I mean, when I tell you the wins taste phenomenal, but the losses are sour, I know. I know. And for me, and again, like I said, there's certain chapters that the story is not just mine to tell. And, let's be honest, love and marriage are one of those stories that aren't just ours to tell. However, for me, that was a part of growth and development and accepting that there is failure that can happen even when you think you're at your best. Because what I think was my best could have been what someone else thought was, my worst. And so I went through a really, really deep traumatic loss, and I lost my mother too soon, very fast, in a very traumatic way.
Oh, man.
And she was my anchor. I had no other friends who had lost their mother. And so when I lost her during, it was 2020, and it was not from COVID. And so, the world, right, was going through this fire, right? Literal fire, the pandemic. And so was I. But for a totally different reason, And so her illness just, it took her away quickly. Oh, man. And so for the last week that my mom lived on this earth, I sat with her and we just waited for Jesus to come. And I will tell you, Robbie, that sounds really peaceful, but it was pretty ugly.
Yeah, I imagine.
It was pretty ugly. And I'll be quite frank with you, it's unnatural as a child to watch your parent leave earth.
Yeah.
But what I learned during those 7 days changed me forever. That for me was the life event that showed me that it'll be okay. Everything works out. Shortly after that, I got accepted into my PhD program, which was my mother's dream for me because I think 10-year-old Joy thought she was going to be a wife with 10 kids, okay, not getting a doctorate. And certainly, certainly not doing the work of research. I don't think that's what I was thinking. However, I always wanted to be a writer and I always was very ambitious. And so, I had 10 Barbies and they had different careers. And I was for sure thinking I can do every single one of these. Okay. Are you kidding me? A doctor and a Pilates instructor? Check. But that's because my mom let me dream, big and bold. And so she set that up for me. And so it's something that I continued with my own son, but continued with my own life. And so to get us, back to the place of when you say there are these life events that happen, right? And they are the catalyst for growth and for development and for reckoning. For me, it was losing my mother, losing that identity as her daughter. And then very shortly after that, losing my identity as his wife. And so losing both of those identities at the same time showed me, okay, well, you know what? I've got one more identity left, Robbie. You know what I'm about to say. Being a mother. You knew I was going to say that.
I did.
Okay. I had one identity left. And so I looked at Nolan and Nolan looked at me and I said, this is what we are going to do.
Let's go.
Excellence is our birthright. Okay. Tighten up, buddy. You are going into high school. I am starting a PhD program. And we are going to achieve remarkable things together. Wow. And so that is my future engineer. And he got into the college of his dreams. Wow. And so he's only a few weeks in, but he is happy. And, we are really blessed and really fortunate. I had the best colleague in his dad. His dad was a great co-parent. And so together, we sewed into our son. And so, but I did, after that loss, I really had to look at him and I had to say, this is what we're going to do. We are both going to achieve great things. Less than 2% of people in the world have a PhD. So at the same time, I am getting you through high school and getting you to college and cultivating this legacy of excellence, right? Which is what I learned from my family tree. I said, at the same time I'm doing this for you, Mom's going to do it for herself. And it's go time, buddy.
Golly.
It's go time.
That is big time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. First, your mother sounds like a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, when I was saying the inspiration behind our conversation or in our conversation, you know, often people who go through tough times, which we all inevitably do, some look different, some are relative, some are however you want to frame it. We often look at younger generations or other people and just say, here's some wisdom. Here's maybe how to avoid what I just went through. Or maybe here's how to deal with what I just went through. And I have this conversation with a gentleman who's a very close friend of mine who was diagnosed with ALS. He can't walk and his hands don't work anymore. He can barely lift his arms. His diaphragm's going, yet everything is fine here up. And he has this vision of the future of mankind, womankind, that we all don't have to suffer to be enlightened.
Ooh.
And that's what he's trying to teach. His mission is to teach that. And when he first brought this topic to me, he didn't frame it in the way that made me understand where he was coming from yet. And he asked me, how do I think people change? And I said, suffering. I believe that. I think it's hard to go through big, effective, pivoting, shifting changes without something.
I'm going to be honest with you, Robbie. I'm on your page. I am. I'm on your page. And let me tell you, my mom was on your friend's page. So there was a saying, right, that she would always say to me growing up, because sometimes I was a rebel without a cause. And I said, listen, I studied theater in high school, okay? So I had plenty of performances for my mom growing up. I don't know that she enjoyed all the shows, okay? But there were plenty of acts. And so I say that to say there was something that my mother would always tell me, and she would say, Joy, you do not have to learn everything the hard way. She said, if you have already seen someone else go through this, and it did not work out so well for them, you do not have to learn everything the hard way. And I wish that I listened.
Heard that. I know.
I do. Know. I wish I listened, because she is not wrong. Your friend is not wrong. However, a wise person told me once, right? Control what you can control. And we cannot control, right, everything.
Right.
But we can control what we can control. So therefore, to your point, if suffering happens first, right, if the loss, if the failure, okay, if that happens first, and the win and the celebration and the achievement and the success happens next, well, then a win is a win, right? A win is a win. So some of us, we might have to learn the hard way. Some of us, yes.
As long as you learn.
As long as
right.
you learn.
Right.
Right? What is it? We either win or we learn. As long as you learn. I used to be afraid to say the word failure. I used to refuse to say it's a loss. But now I have accepted that there are some aspects of life that are actually failures.
Sure.
You know, and there are times when, in fact, surprise, surprise, you do lose.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But I know with your story, right, and I feel the same with mine, I believe that you can rebuild anything again in life. I do. Crazy, maybe, right? Novel, perhaps. I mean, fanciful.
Heard some pretty big stories.
Yes.
People coming from the bottom.
I'm just saying, how many times have you heard the rags to riches and then the riches to rags and then the rags to riches? The point is that you, as we said, right, we love a pivot, Okay. Not afraid of a metamorphosis, you know, and it is and it's necessary, you know, it's very, very necessary. And so even when I look at this stage, you know, of my life, the world is my oyster. If someone, you know, calls me tomorrow and asks me to take on a speaking engagement, you know, in Europe, well, here I go and here we are. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I can sit down on the couch and talk to you, right, on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday at 1:00. Because I don't have to pick up Nolan in 15 minutes, you know?
Yeah, got to call him in 30. But
I'll have to call him in 30, perhaps, okay? Because you remember in college, you were like, oh, yes, Mom, what do you need?
That's right.
I know, I've turned into a pick-me girl when he calls me. How was your day? Really? Oh, and then what? Okay, call me back in 5 minutes.
Pick me girl.
But you know, we say all of that, right, to say that, you know, you do have to go sometimes through the fire. You really do. But I think that if you are well equipped, then you'll be okay. You will be okay. And this is what I like to show up in my writing, Robbie. This is what I like to show up in my books. You know, when I write an op-ed for a magazine or a publication or a book chapter. You know, when this is the TED Talk, right? What does high achieving even mean, and does it even matter? Mm-hmm. You know, this is the TED Talk. And then along the way of dissecting and answering those questions, right? I like to look at how women are impacted by love, by motherhood, right? You know, by marriage, by success. How do we define success? By leadership. You know, all of these different aspects of our identity, how are we affected by them, right? And why do we need to redefine high achievement for women? Well, this is why, because of everything that we've been discussing. Mm-hmm. We need to define high achievement for women because we are not just one thing and we are not a monolith, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we have, you know, when we have a fire and when we're in a wilderness season, and we still have to show up at work and we still have to excel in our careers and we still have to achieve because the other thing my mom used to tell me is you cannot pay Duke Power with tears. Okay. And she said, so how about you cry all the way to the bank? Right. She said she never saw someone boo-hooing, okay, after they cashed a check. Oh my gosh, I had to cash this check.
Yeah, that is good. All right, so there's a thing that's been crossing my mind as we've been talking. Let me see if I can frame it right because I'm married to a very strong woman. Mm-hmm. You know, self-proclaimed feminist, very pro everything woman.
Yes.
She could explain it a little better, but
she is phenomenal.
She's a phenomenal woman. She is a physician. She's worked her way into, you know, what she sees as professional success.
She is that high-achieving woman.
She's a high-achieving woman, and I love, you know, there's a couple ways I wanted to go with that because I think I love the topic of defining success because it just can mean so many things. But I mean, the way that there's a core to it, and then there's a trickle effect or a ripple effect. I mean, obviously, like financial success is great, and we all strive for it, but it's hard to achieve without these other steps prior.
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of it has to do with internal growth and internal, you know, all the things we're talking about. And then as it relates to women, you know, I think a lot about how my wife will say things like, you know, when she gets sick, she gets a cold or whatever, she goes to work, she doesn't stay home, and she doesn't complain, and nobody knows. And it's just a really powerful metaphor to what I think you were alluding to earlier, which is why you say as a woman. The experience in this world, in this society, as a woman, you know, and I'm going to say this wrong, is harder than it is for men.
It can be, Robbie.
Can be. I know. I don't mean to generalize, but
no, but I appreciate you saying that.
Well, and that's what I've learned through having open ears and being and hearing the experience of women.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because it can be. And to your point, right? And this is part of, even in this season of my own life, where I have a little bit more freedom and flexibility and liberation to lean into the areas in which I want to. But it is actually unfair a lot of times that we have to have the cold, and then the kids also have the cold, and then go to work and perform and
not complain. Right.
Right? The expectation that we are perfect. It is exhausting.
I can't imagine.
It is exhausting. So to be clear, we do it because we have to.
Mm-hmm.
We're not always doing it because we want to.
Hell no.
It is not, it's not a crown.
Right.
Right?
No.
Heavy is the head, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. It is, it's not a crown. It is exhausting. And that is why I started the work I have a co-author, and we're working on an academic book right now called Soul Labor. Because in Soul Labor, we introduce these restorative practices of self-care and self-love. Because at the same time that a woman is excelling and succeeding in her career, she might be burying her mother, right? She might be losing the love of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She might be going through a divorce, She may be shifting from having been, all she knew, right, as a mom. And now, well, who the hell are you as a woman, right? But do you know? Again, you can't pay Duke power with tears. So you still have to show up.
Yeah.
And you still have to do the things. But is it exhausting? It's exhausting. As a society, how are we going to improve, right, upon that, those kind of like diametrically different aspects of a woman's identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to begin to massage wild with soft, or power with rest?
Mm-hmm.
And you just said it, being an ally in that way of understanding your wife's plight. That is powerful. That's really powerful. And that's the reason why I'm so transparent with my son as a mother, because I want him to understand that. And even though he doesn't know, he does not need to know everything that I deal with. Let's be very clear. Okay. I'm not trying to set him up for for the therapist couch for the rest of his life. But, I have wanted him to know when, hey, bud, mom's tired today. Yeah. I am really exhausted, Mm-hmm. So we're going to order dinner. Okay, I appreciate that you want me to make you salmon tonight. I will make you salmon tomorrow.
That.
But, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
All right, we both have deadlines. How about that? And he is going to be a remarkable husband to a wife one day. Okay, I can tell you that. She's going to be so blessed to have him. But that allyship, right, and that understanding, from men, from husbands, from partners, from dads, that's huge. That's huge, because how are you stepping in? What, did you buy the cough drops? Did you offer her that Sudafed? Don't offer her wine with the Sudafed, Robbie. We're going to be looking at you a little crazy.
Don't worry about that. not in my MO.
How do you show up for those that we love when we see that they're exhausted?
Yeah.
Right? So going all the way back to where we started the conversation, why did I choose to take this social media break that I'm taking right now from a platform that I had built around a brand? Because I had built this brand on the back of being perfect. And that's the truth. And right now, I don't feel so perfect. So professionally, career-wise, I pretty much have that blueprint figured out, right? I know what's next. I have a book proposal. I need a literary agent. I have one book that I'm already writing. I am a lecturer at Wake Forest and UNC Charlotte. And so I'm happy there, right? Thriving. That makes me excited. My research makes me excited. I want to get funding for a documentary so that I can continue to interview high-achieving women about the things that we've talked about the plights of perfection, right?
We'd be happy to produce that documentary, by the way.
Wonderful. So we can talk about that.
Stuff. Okay.
So the blueprint, right, is that's it. That's kind of an easy one a lot of times for folks that are, I don't like to use the word addicted, so I'll just say that have a really close relationship with achievement.
Super close.
Yes.
Codependent.
Yes. Yes. You have a very close relationship with achievement. And so we know the blueprint, right? But getting to the point that who we are with our closest friends is also who we are with the world. That's joy. That's joy. Right? That's freedom. That's liberation. And to be clear, because you mentioned the money aspect, let me just say this. My research actually examined the correlation between high achievement and socioeconomic mobility in undergraduate women, because typically when you come to college with your parents backing, right? Or, perhaps funding or what have you. But the point is, not your own. Right. Yeah, is where I'm going with that. And then, you receive this degree and you're told immediately, go get a job, go make a lot of money. And so you've been high achieving, right? You've made good grades. You've taken on the internships. You've done all the things. Like I said, I've defined high achievement by 9 non-cognitive skills and attributes. And so you can't quantify them, right? Because you can't quantify how ambitious someone is. But in our society, it typically will show up in your bank account. Right. And so I was very curious in looking at the intersections between high achieving women, socioeconomic mobility, and sectors of class. And that's what I studied in my research. And so even in my book that, I'm pitching, and my book proposal that I'm writing right now, and in my TED Talk that I'm going to give, we can't ignore that aspect of our life and society. So, when people say things like money doesn't matter, okay. Gotcha.
That's usually coming from somebody that's got it.
Noted. I'm going to keep working.
Right.
Incredibly hard. Okay. While you say that, I'm going to keep unpacking this relationship that I have with that, because I just believe that to whom much is given, right, much is required. And so some of the causes that are important to me to support, and the ones that if I don't support them, I encourage others to support, are UNCF and Dress for Success here in Charlotte, Hope for Harvest, and the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, and even, your local church or synagogue. But I am teaching my son that we are to give back with our time and our treasure. And so the only way that I can do so, right, is by increasing my socioeconomic mobility. So studying what that looked like was something that I was very, very interested in, and continuing to study what that looks like for women, because despite and irregardless of, right, systemic things and disparities, we know the gender economists are telling us that women are still excelling academically, educationally, financially. And one of the data sets that I think is really important and significant in this space when we're talking about socioeconomic mobility is something that was produced by the UN Women. And essentially what they said is that, an educated woman creates this empowered woman. This empowered woman is one who is able to economically contribute to her community and the world at large. That's huge. That's huge. We really are that powerful.
Yeah, you are.
But we do need you.
Well.
Yeah, we do.
No,
we do. Because listen, okay, a girl still wants to blush.
No. Oh, Dr. Joy Davis. Man, I say man. You're a woman of cities. I just say that.
I know. That's just what we say.
Unfortunately, we've got to wrap. Very unfortunate. That's the problem with these interviews, is that as much as I want it to be a sit-down conversation like this would go on for a lot longer.
It would.
Absolutely.
It would.
And I've learned, I've been inspired.
Oh, thank you.
I've been educated, and I've been emotionally charged by you today.
Thank you.
So thank you. I very much appreciate it.
I am grateful. I am honored to share this space with you, because you are doing remarkable things, Robbie. Thank you. You were my yes when I wanted to say no.
I know. I still don't understand why, but
it was good stuff.
It was. So why did you say yes?
Because I am in a season of boldness. Yeah, I'm in a season of boldness. I used to say,
"Wasn't my smile?"
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right.
So after losing mom, I was in this season of pursuing softness and healing. And so what healed me, right, during that season is not what's going to carry me into the next.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm back. Now I am back pursuing strength and boldness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the healing happened. Yeah. So, and of course, obviously we don't ever lose our fire. You know, we don't ever lose our fire for sure. But I said yes because I have to be bold even in the middle of feeling uncertain. And so when you say yes to things, right, God hears you. And so the more that you say yes, the more he says yes.
Mm.
And so I like to say, thank you, God. Now more, please. And also, this was my opportunity to celebrate you and to celebrate, you know, your achievements and your successes. And I just think that's important. I'm one of those folks. I mean, my friends usually do say, you know, okay, hold on, Joy, you're always cheering for us. You know, let me cheer for you. And I appreciate that. And I think it's great. But, you know, cheer for her. She deserves it. You know, cheer for him. He deserves it. And so it was an easy it was, you know, it was an easy yes. I knew you weren't going to ask the questions that didn't make me feel good. And, you know, and I felt like if it didn't make me feel good, oh, well, right?
Yeah. Well, there was your bold yes.
Yeah, my bold yes. And so let's see where the next yes comes from our conversation.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be one.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's going to be one waiting. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a door that opens. Mm-hmm. And so if we want to step into these doors, right? If we want to get the things that we pray for and that we set ourselves up for, well, then we have to say yes. Mm-hmm. We have to say yes, because if we are constantly saying no and wondering why the doors are closed.
A no is a shut door.
That's it.
No question.
That's it.
Well, thank you for saying all that. That's really kind. I also feel like the day you walked in here, there was a bit of a connection.
Yeah,
and just
for sure.
in that, you know, the Charlotte and some of the people that, you know, have overlap between you and I. And I enjoyed that. And that's why we kept in touch. And then all of a sudden this evolved out of that.
I know. So
that was cool.
Yeah. And it's so wild because obviously we didn't grow up in the same decade, Robbie.
I don't know that. I don't know how old you are.
But I love the fact that, you know, high school, right? Mm-hmm. We went to high school within close proximity of each other. Mm-hmm. And that is the ethos of Charlotte. Yeah. Charlotte is a big, small city.
Very.
You always know someone. And that takes me back to the point where you have to know who are your people, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Because I love to say, oh, wow, we do know, you know, so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we did discover that we knew someone that was the same person who I loved very, very much. However, again, that just takes us all the way back to the point about the chapters that we leave out. And so, grateful for all of those, you know, life experiences. But but here we are creating new ones.
Thank you for sharing everything.
We'll do it again. Pleasure was all mine.
Thank you.
Yep.